Do you hear a roaring noise?
No,
Good. They're grinding up trees outside of my office.
I'm sorry.
Of all the days they picked to do it.
Sorry. Oh. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for the Hull and Chandler Leadership Series. The law firm of Hull and Chandler is proud to sponsor the Leadership Series, a program where Hull and Chandler attorney Rocky Cabagnot interviews local and regional leaders in the nonprofit, private, and public sectors to discuss the real-world interplay of law, business, and social dynamics within the context of our continuously changing times. At our firm, his practice helps nonprofits stay legally compliant, avoid legal problems, and resolve legal problems when they come up. Rocky provides legal services to the nonprofit sector through the fractional general counsel program or by providing subscription legal services so that nonprofits can always have access to quality legal counsel when they need it, whether it's to review a contract or file a lawsuit on behalf of a nonprofit. Rocky, take it away.
All right, everybody. Well, welcome to another edition of the Leadership Series and taking time out of your busy week. Obviously, we do these on Wednesdays to join us for another great conversation. And we're really very, very happy to have on today's show Ronnie L. Bryant to talk about his new book called Thriving from the Backseat, Tips for Surviving as a Nonprofit CEO. Before we get into that, I'll just read a little bit about our guest. So Ronnie L. Bryant is founder and principal consultant at Ronnie L. Bryant LLC, a consulting firm specializing in executive coaching, organizational management, and board development and training for top-level corporate and not-for-profit managers. Bryant created the company in 2017 to help executives improve their leadership skills and business acumen to operate organizations while maintaining a competitive edge in diverse, evolving domestic and global marketplaces. Our guest, Ronnie, he has served as president and CEO of the Charlotte Regional Partnership for over 13 years. He's got a long resume, particularly in the areas of economic development. Had served executive positions at the Greater Shreveport Chamber of Commerce in Louisiana, the St. Louis Regional Chamber and Growth Association, the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance. He's also been very involved as a volunteer on board of directors for nonprofits. He's been on the board here in the Charlotte area, the American Leadership Forum, Aspire Community Capital, Goodwill Industries of the Southern Piedmont, Charlotte City Club, Jazz Arts Initiative. He has also been involved in higher education. He is a former dean and a faculty member for the University of Oklahoma's Economic Development Institute, and something that he and I share, we've both been adjunct professors for the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Ronnie holds a BS in Business Management from Louisiana State University in Shreveport. He was a fellow at the Center for International Leadership, the Center for Creative Leadership, Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, and University of Oklahoma's Economic Development Institute. He is also a recipient of the American Economic Development Council's Robert B. Castle Leadership Award. So anyway, I'd like to welcome to our show Mr. Ronnie L. Bryant.
Rocky, thank you. And thank you and Shannon for this opportunity, and welcome to everyone who's joined us. Some of you I know, and it's really good to see you, and a few that I'm seeing and meeting here for the first time. So good afternoon. I would like to ask if you have a camera on your device, would you please turn it on so I can see your face? It'll help me feel more comfortable looking at a face than just looking at a name. Thank you. Okay. Really appreciative of this opportunity. I mean, to talk about this book. It's something that means a lot to me. And I think the advice in it, as simple as it might come across, is really advice that has helped me. And I've been told that it's been very beneficial to a lot of people who I've had the opportunity to spend some time with. But throughout my 30+ year economic development career, I was always from the beginning involved in our professional development activities. I think Rocky mentioned my involvement with the Economic Development Institute at the University of Oklahoma, and plus several other university and professional development programs that I'm still involved with around the country. But even in an informal way, I've always been a mentor, and I found myself being a recipient of, of phone calls and emails from colleagues around the country wanting advice on how to navigate a particular situation they might be dealing with, or how to get out of a jam that they might have gotten into with their board or with someone in the community or with a staff member, etc. And so I've always been fielding those types of calls and responding to those requests for assistance. And then when I would finish a presentation, whether one of my classroom presentations, whether it's around marketing or organizational management or whatever, I would always get a lot of questions about what I would call survival questions. And so I put together a few years ago a slide presentation of 14 tips, and I entitled it on tips on how to keep your job. And at the end of all of my presentation, I would go through these 14 tips. Well, it's these 14 tips that I turned into the 14 chapters of the book, Driving from the Backseat. And I'll tell you more about the title later.
Yeah.
This was an attempt, without a doubt, to be able to give advice to leaders of not-for-profit organizations, and not just in the economic development environment, but across the board. And 14 things that I think you really need to pay close attention to. And I think it would definitely increase the probability of you staying and surviving, if you will, in your role. Within a not-for-profit environment, the average tenure for a CEO is anywhere between 5 and 7 years. And I was very fortunate. I was CEO here in Charlotte for 13 years. And so I'm very fortunate to buck that trend. But I really believe there's a direct correlation between my understanding some of the survival tips that we'll talk about here and my longevity in the job.
I got to say, Ronnie, I got to say that your book, when I read it, it's something that I wish that I would have had, because, before coming here to Holland Channel, like we had talked about, I had served as a executive director of a community action agency for a little over 2 years. And I had, prior to that, I was in higher education. I taught at the now defunct Charlotte School of Law. And so in many respects, your book, would have been helpful to me to understanding many of the nuances that come that, there are things, we had Pat McDowell on our show a number of weeks ago to talk about, those in the for-profit area wanting to transition for a variety of reasons into the nonprofit sector. Maybe COVID has given a lot of people a lot of time to think about, the future of their career. And so you see a lot of folks wanting to transfer from maybe the for-profit sector into the nonprofit sector. And I think that in many respects, having a book like this, or at least some of the tips, and obviously you're going to go through it, can help those who are looking to maybe transition into the nonprofit area become a little more aware of things to look out for. So anyway, I just want to kind of jump in that. But yeah, tell us a little bit about this book, Ronnie.
Okay, and I think that's a great segue, Rocky, especially as it relates to individuals who might be considering not-for-profit work. And so I asked the question in chapter 1, who am I and why am I here? I think it's very important, if you're involved or if you choose to work within the not-for-profit sector, that it's more to you than just a job. The not-for-profit sector, the whole notion of a not-for-profit entity is the government giving an organization an opportunity to perform a service within a community that, and without being responsible for paying taxes and turning every dime that you raise into service. And so this should be more of a calling. It should be more of a mission of life as opposed to just a job. And if you work in the not-for-profit sector and all it is to you is just a paycheck, all it is to you is a means to earning a living, then you might not be in the right place. And every chapter in the book, I have a quote, and this one is Claude Bissell. You know, risk more than others think is safe, care more than others think is wise, dream more than others think is practical, and expect more than others think is possible. There's something extra that's needed in the not-for-profit sector that, I mean, within the for-profit sector, you all roads, all arrows lead in one direction, and that's the bottom line of the organization. And if the organization does not have a healthy bottom line, the organization will not survive. Well, the purpose of a not-for-profit organization, it's not the financial bottom line, it's the service bottom line. What kind of impact are you making in the community for whatever your mission might be? And the organization needs a leader who's passionate and truly understands the nature of the work and is truly committed and believes in the nature of the work, and not someone who's showing up just as it being a 9 to 5. Anytime, you can stop me anytime if you have any questions or you want me to spend a little more time on either one of these.
Yes, please, everybody. Today we're going to have much more of an interactive audience, and we've got these slides here. You know, Ronnie has been an educator, and that's really a lot of this is to facilitate almost like a seminar in some respects. So please feel free to either unmute yourself and ask a question if there's something, particularly if you even had interest in getting involved in either the nonprofit sector, or you're on a board of a nonprofit, you wanted to learn a little bit more. Here's a great opportunity to talk to somebody who's been there, who's done that. And we're giving you that forum here to have that dialogue with Ronnie. So please, you know, if you feel uncomfortable, you can put something in the chat. We'll always check that as well. But really, we want you to get some real takeaways out of this. Not every day we get someone like Ronnie to come on our program. So please, you know, feel free to ask questions. He can definitely handle it. I promise you.
Yes, indeed. In the second chapter of the book, when I hear someone asking a question, okay, the second chapter of the book, I asked the question here: am I a thought leader or a servant leader? And the quote I chose, I think, is very appropriate, because I think Jesse Jackson nailed it when he states that leaders must be tough enough to fight, tender enough to cry, human enough to make mistakes, humble enough to admit them, strong enough to absorb the pain, and resilient enough to bounce back and keep moving. If I was to ask you, everyone on the screen, by show of hands, how many of you consider yourself a thought leader? Just raise your hand. Consider yourself a thought leader. How many of you consider yourself a servant leader? How many of you think you're both? I would think you need to be a little of both. There are times when you need to be out front, but there are also times when you really do the organization and the effort a lot of good when you step back in the background and let others stand out front. But you have to be astute enough to know when. An organization should not just be about the CEO. You're the staff face of the organization, but you do not have to be the true the true public face. You have board members and others who you should give an opportunity to be out front. You have others that bring skills and experiences that really need to take the lead. Not that you as the executive director, CEO, whatever the title might be, not that you relinquish your leadership role, but you not allow your ego to be the driver in the way you make decisions. But you be a true leader, and you look at some of the attributes that Reverend Jackson has laid out here in his quote, and truly shape yourself into the type of leader that provides the organization with solid, firm leadership, that what I like to call balanced. Understanding that balance between when do you put board members out front, when do you put your other staff members out front, and when, as the CEO, when are you out front? What is that balance? And it's not one size fits all. You have to be aware of your situation and truly understand when it's appropriate. The decisions you make here in terms of the type of leader you are can directly impact your relationship with your staff and your stakeholders and your leadership directly. And there are three relationships that you must manage in an effort to ensure any kind of longevity in your job. And those three relationships are: number one, your board members; number two, elected officials and stakeholders; and then number three, your senior staff. Those three relationships that can directly impact how long you serve as the head of an organization. And so if you're thinking about longevity, you think about the relationship that you have to maintain and how you maintain those relationships. Carrying it a little bit further is
do you have any, yeah, I'm going to say back on that last slide, maybe just sort of in your experience, are there folks that you've either seen, that kind of are examples of sort of that blend of thought and servant leader that you've seen kind of give us sort of a real life kind of, I mean, in addition to Reverend Jackson, I mean, someone like maybe in the nonprofit sector around here that you have seen that exemplifies that?
You asking me or you asking the panel?
I was asking you, but just sort of like in your experience, like what would be like an example of seeing an executive director who is doing both being a thought leader, but then also serving as a servant leader with that right balance?
I think I've worked with some great people here in Charlotte with the CEO of the YMCA, Andy and I. We had a very good relationship. I've learned a lot. You mentioned Patton McDowell here a minute ago. Patton truly understands this concept of leadership and how it balances. But I think you look at individuals who have longevity in a position, and that is a true testament to the type of leader and the type of leadership they provide the individuals whom they have to work with. Because 85% of not-for-profit leaders are asked to leave their job, not because of the performance of the mission of the organization, but because of their relationship with those three entities that I spoke of. And if you don't manage those relationships, you will not survive in the position. And as I stated, in order to manage the relationship, you have to understand what the expectations are of each individual entity. And we'll talk here in a minute about meeting expectations. Moving on to chapter 3, there has to be a vision. If you're leading an organization, you have to know where you want to take the organization. And one of my mentors, Jack Welch, states that good business leaders create a vision, articulate it, own it, and drive it to completion. If you don't know where you're going, how will you know when you get there? If you're the leader, you have people following you. You've got staff, you've got community stakeholders, some cases you've got elected officials, and in most cases you've got a board, and they're all watching you. And it's you know, me personally and Natasha, I might not totally agree with you, but if you're passionate and clearly articulate where you're trying to take us, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt based on the strength of your passion, the strength of your articulation, and you're willing to own it. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you cannot square your shoulders and articulate to me what you're trying to accomplish, and you want me to follow you, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You have to be able to clearly articulate and clearly show that you believe in where you're trying to lead your organization and have a clear and concise plan of where you're trying to go. Everyone's not going to agree with you, but that's okay. You have to have a level of confidence in yourself in an effort to ensure that you can be as diligent as Jack Welch here states you should be. And it's very important that those around you see you as a visionary leader who understands the mission, understands where the organization needs to be, and has a plan for getting the organization there. Before I move on, any comments? This particular chapter here was very personal in a way because it talks about patience. And I titled it, What a Difference a Day Make, because every action does not require a reaction. I don't think there's a person on this call who's not received maybe an email from somebody that they didn't like. You didn't like the email, and you had a response, and you really wanted to send them a response. But you knew that if you sent the response at that time, it would be all out war. Sometimes it's just worth it to wait, sleep on it, type it up, but do not send it. And I guarantee you the next day, you'll feel different about sending that email. There's sometimes you not only should you wait before you respond, regardless of what it is. Sometimes you find that you really don't have to do anything and you just let it take care of itself. In my role with the Charlotte Regional Partnership, I could literally have been in a public fight with somebody every day about something, about anything, if that's what I chose to do, if that's the kind of reactionary person I chose to be. But I learned early on, after a few mistakes, that you have to have patience. You have to have the ability to idle your motor when you feel like stripping your gear. Give yourself a cooling off period. Approach a situation methodically, not emotionally. Take the emotion out of it and deal with the issue. Go ahead.
So Ronnie, tell us about, so you mentioned that you learned from experience. Could you maybe share with us a time where you did not follow this maxim and what exactly occurred when I guess the email was sent?
I'll tell you one other one first. I received this email from one of my county partners, and he and I we never did see eye to eye on some things, and he sent me this very cryptic email, and I responded, and I was even more cryptic than he was, and I mean my response was ugly, and I sent the email to two of my senior VPs, and I guarantee you within a minute and a half of sending them the email, they were both in my door because they thought they were CC'd on an email I had sent back to this individual.
Okay.
And I assured them I did not send the email. But that was the time when I actually wrote it. But there have been times with elected officials that I've responded to a quote in the paper where I shouldn't have. And I really should have just let it slide. And you know, you have people around you, you have a marketing director, etc. People give you advice, and sometimes as when you're the CEO, you know, you're the smartest person in the room, remember? And so you just gotta let your ego drive your actions, and it gets you in trouble. And I know that from personal experiences. But you have to be patient. You have to be methodical. You have to take your emotion out of it and allow yourself to deal with issues, because the whole notion of working within a not-for-profit environment, you're dealing with a lot of people who have some stake in what you're doing. We use the term stakeholders because you have a lot of stakeholders around you. And again, different people receive different things from your activity. It's not as singularly focused as, say, in the private sector. And so you have to understand the nuances of all the people that you're dealing with, and understand that everybody does not have a noble agenda as it relates to what you're doing. And some people have their own agendas that are not, they're not in the best light of what you're trying to accomplish. But you have to understand that also. And so in that light, you just want to take your time and be patient. The notion of driving from the back seat is all about board leadership. And there's an art to managing a board. And I really find it comical sometimes when I talk to people who want to start a not-for-profit, and they put a board together, and they, I guess, believe they can wake up one morning and know how to manage a board. Trust me, it's not easy. And it can be like herding cats. Every board member is serving on that board for a different reason in most cases. And some of the reasons are noble and some of them are not. But it takes a very astute CEO to understand the different nuances and understand how you must engage with the different personalities that make up your leadership. And you have to do it without overpowering them. Technically, they are in charge. They have the fiduciary responsibility for the organization. You are staff, but you cannot let the inmates run the asylum, okay? You have to maintain a sense of control. Therefore, they might have a steering wheel in the front seat, but you're in the back seat with your own wheel and your own brake pedal and your own gas pedal, and you're actually in control. They just don't know it. You keep them in their lane. It's an art, guys. It's not a science, but it's important. It goes back to servant leader and thought leader. You can't get in front of your board. The worst thing you can do is get in front of your board. You have to respect your board, and you have to clearly understand your position. You are staff. You are not a peer. They can let you join the country club and the dinner club and do all the cool stuff that board members do, but still you are staff. And I have seen, pardon?
I think I see a question in the audience. I think a hand up from Danielle. So, got our first question. Come on in.
Are you struggling with being staff, Danielle?
Well, Ronnie, I'm glad you're talking about this because, you know, this has been one thing I think that, you know, I have 25 board members, 25 bosses, right? And managing different personalities and different, you know, again, agendas and reasons why they're with the board. But can you talk about, because I'm really trying to work on board engagement, right? And what that looks like and have options, right? How are different ways that, and really catering to the strengths that my board members are coming with so that, but make it work for the betterment, of course, of the organization. Can you speak to, even though your board members are coming with their agendas, their, you know, reasons why, how do you kind of align them around, you know, your mission, your vision, and still what works for you and what's going to help, you know, move your agenda forward?
I think it goes back to your organization strategic plan. In the strategic planning process, all individual board members should have the opportunity to provide input. And so now you know where they're coming from if they were honest in the board meeting. Now, number two, if you think for whatever reason, someone has not given you their true objective as part of their plan, you need to go and sit down with them one-on-one and truly understand their expectations. And then it's up to you to figure out how do you meet their expectations within the lane that the strategic plan has drawn. What is it that they want? And if it's outside of your strategic planning deliverables, then that is a major problem that needs to be brought to their attention. But the strategic plan provides you with the cover, if you will. And that's why that plan is so important. The cover to keep board members corralled, if you will, because board members can and will push you in the mission creep, without a doubt. And you have to have some kind of basis for not wanting to do something other than just telling them, I don't want to do it. And yet basis is your strategic plan. Now, there are some personalities, Danielle, that are just not ever going to, I'll just say, ever going to act right, okay? And there are just some people, and these are the people that can get you in trouble too. You have to keep your eye on them, truly, because again, they have their own agenda, and you have, but the best thing you can do is try to understand that agenda, and then try to get them to understand what the strategic plan is allowed in that area, whatever it might be, and see if you can find some alignment there. Or maybe there's a cause to, within the context of the full board, within the context of the full board, maybe the strategic plan needs to be addressed and give that board member an opportunity to see what they're looking for, now part of the plan. One of the things we don't have within the not-for-profit environment that I really enjoy watching within the strong city manager form of government. Now take Charlotte, for example. Charlotte city manager, Marcus Jones, Marcus reports to the council. And what I mean by that, he doesn't report to an individual council person or the mayor. He reports to the group as a whole. So any directive to Marcus has to be the collective group speaking to him. So if one council person come to Marcus and say, Marcus, I want us to do X, all Marcus has to do is say, we'll put that on Monday night's agenda and we'll discuss it at the board meeting. He has there's no authority for a council member to direct him to do anything. But we don't necessarily have that clear-cut distinction within the not-for-profit environment. You know, it's pretty ambiguous in the sense of how much control or influence you allow one individual to have. And it varies. So that puts an added layer of pressure, to your point, on you in trying to keep an individual corral. Does that make sense?
That does. Thank you, Ronnie. But for the record, I have to say my board is pretty good, but I have had challenges in the past, but yes.
That's good. It's great when you can say you've got a good board. Keep it that way. Don't let him get away. Okay.
Do we have any other CEOs or executive directors who are in the chat, as they say? Just because it's kind of interesting to get it, because this book is definitely directed to you. So I think it'd be great to know who all is in there. I see my good friend Karen Brackett Browning in the house. That's great. I know she is longstanding CEO from both in North Carolina and South Carolina as well, and a former guest of the show here as well. So, anyway, please continue, Ronnie. This is really good discussion.
This is a fun little chapter here. There's something about board members, and this is probably the only chapter that in the book where a board member might not like. So if you buy the book and you want to share it with your board, take this chapter out, okay? But most board members are successful people in their communities and in their private job, day jobs, etc. Very bright and successful individual, and they make decisions every day as a part of their job. But for some reason though, when they enter our board room, something happens, and their ability to make sound, concise decisions sometimes just goes away. I call it civic robotics. They just lose it when they're walking down boardroom, and they allow things to happen that they never would allow to happen within their private company. They will allow somebody to be incompetent. They will allow somebody to waste time talking. They'll allow non-action, even collectively as a group. You know, a very significant portion of CEOs who are asked to leave an organization, it's probably anywhere from 6 months to 2 years later than it really should have been done. And that's usually because of the board's inability to act and not wanting to act and being reluctant to remove a non-performing individual for a lot of different reasons. And it's very unfortunate. If you have a board chair, here it is October, and it's very clear, Danielle, I pick on you, that you need to go. Very clear. And it's October. And Jen is your board chair. And now Jen's saying, oh, I know if I fire Danielle as board chair, I'm now taking on a part-time job. I got to deal with the staff. I got to deal with our funders. I got to deal with our stakeholders. I got to let the community know the wheels are not falling off this organization. I got to lead a search, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, okay, it's October, December 31st. If I can just put up with Danielle for another 2.5 months, it'll be Trina's problem, my vice president. and just kick the can down the road. And Danielle gets new life. But it just rolls, and I have seen it roll. And it's I mean, maybe from a job perspective, it might be a good thing, but is it the best thing for the organization? But decisions like that, board members really, in some cases, financial decisions. I mean, they don't fully hold staff accountable for the financial performance of the organization. And that gets everybody in trouble. And so, but these are things that in their own companies, they would handle very easily. But when it comes to dealing with us within our organization, in some cases, they lose it. And so as the head of the organization, you have to recognize this and do whatever you can to steer your board to sound decision-making and to sound leadership and actually exercising their fiduciary responsibility. Because at the end of the day, they are responsible and they need to accept it and not put you in a position where the organization is suffering because they will not move in the manner that they need to move and with the speed that they need to move in. Any comment before I move on?
Hi, Ronnie. This is Karen Brackett Browning in
Hello,
Rockville.
Karen.
How are you?
Great.
I have a question, and I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your perspective. Doesn't board training help with that so that board members can recognize when they have someone on the board that is not functioning at the level that he or she should be? Shouldn't continuing education help with that?
As a consultant who provides board training, yes. Okay, without a doubt.
I agree too.
And in all seriousness, yes. Most boards have never been trained, and I've been fortunate. I've trained boards around the country, and you'll be surprised. People, again, they come to boards, no experience, or they come with their own agenda. And probably one of the best things you can do is have someone take your board through a board training exercise, without a doubt.
And I just want to give kudos to Danielle Frazier, because I know I sit on that workforce development board in Charlotte for several years, and I know that they provide continuing education, and so does the community action agencies. However, I think sometimes it needs to be more intentional and intense.
Very much so.
You know, for community action agencies.
Some boards do it well, and some boards do not do anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys bring up a great point that, that a line item in many nonprofits, budgets really ought to be, you invest in HR, right? You invest in your personnel, you send people to conferences and things of that nature. But, I think that who is the driving force, as you said, Ronnie, is the board, right? At least in theory, right? And I know, like, from my experience in community action, Karen and I, that's how we know each other initially, is from that world. Is they definitely they encourage, funders do encourage investment in board training, understanding fiduciary duties, all of that important thing. But it may be across the board sometimes. It may not be. There could be, there's a lot of reasons, but I think definitely board training is an important factor, because not everybody comes to join a board knowing much or anything about nonprofits a lot of times. And I think that they may sit down and kind of observe more dominant figures on the board kind of take the lead, when all of them have their own, they all have a fiduciary duty. They have 3 fiduciary duties actually under North Carolina to the board. And so I think I don't think you can have enough training for a board. That's my take anyway.
I totally agree. Going into chapter 7 here, I've always believed that we're in the business of managing someone else's expectations. And we need to understand what those expectations are. But we also need to understand that the world isn't interested in the storm you've encountered, but whether or not you brought the ship in. It doesn't matter how tough it was. It really doesn't. Natasha, if you're late for a meeting, it doesn't matter if you got stuck in traffic. That ain't my problem. You were late for the meeting. And don't come in starting talking about traffic. We got work to do. Nobody's going to give you a pity party. We got work to do. Let's get it done. It's tough work. It's hard work. It's supposed to be tough and hard, because if it wasn't, anybody could do it. When you take on the role as the lead for a not-for-profit organization, you take on an awesome responsibility. And you position yourself as being responsible for a very important service or function within that community. And you need to understand that. And it's not going to be easy. And you don't look for a pat on the back constantly, or wanting a shoulder to lay on. It doesn't work that way. You gotta put your big boy britches on and get it done. And just get it done. And if you need this elusive unanimous affirmation, you're in the wrong business. If you need to stand around and hold hands and sing Kumbaya and give a group hug at the end of the day, you're in the wrong business. And this is my quote here. When I look in the mirror each morning, I accept the fact that at least 30% of the people that I come into contact with are not going to agree with me. That's okay. I don't need unanimous affirmation. And you're not going to get it anyway. You will never please everybody. But that should not dampen your flame. That should not in any way stop you. That should really energize you. Because if you are passionate, you're prepared, now you understand being strategic, and you're going to own what you're doing. With it, you can move on without 100% support. But you've got to be sure and make sure you take care of that 70%. You've got to be true to yourself. You have to see yourself as a winner if you want to perform as a winner. You have to believe in yourself. You have to truly believe that you have prepared yourself and expose yourself to the tools that are necessary for you to be successful. That's where you get your confidence from. That inner self of knowing, I got this. Because that's what you need to convey to your leadership. At the end of the day, I got this. You can rest assured, I got this. And it needs to be done from a position of honesty and integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. Trina, I do not have to lie to you in order to get what I need. You can challenge my methodology. You can challenge my approach, but I will not allow you to challenge my integrity. What you see is what you get. And it's going to be honest and it's going to be truthful. And that's the reputation that you as a leader need to have in the community. Again, people might not truly agree with you. They might totally disagree with you. But you want them to believe that your approach is one that you passionately believe is the right thing to do, because you have a reputation of being honest. You have a reputation of the highest integrity, and that is directly correlated to how long you can survive in a community. Your stakeholders, your constituency, your staff, they need to be able to trust you. But in order for them to trust you, you have to be sure that you can trust yourself. You have to be trustworthy. As I stated when I started, it's not a job. There's more to it than just a paycheck. There's more to it than just showing up at 8:30 and leaving at 5. And the minute you stop making decisions to do your job and you start making decisions to keep your job, you have become worthless. Your community needs more. They don't need you being safe. Karen, they need you raising the bar consistently. The worst thing an organization can do is to have somebody 2 years from retirement and say, okay, we'll just let them stay the 2 years and then they retire. You'll get nothing the next 2 years but status quo. And you cannot survive off of status quo. The organization would be better off just paying the person for 2 years and then finding you a leader that's going to lead the organization. You have to make decisions to do your job. And if you live every day worried about losing your job, you're in the wrong job. You need to think about, is this the space that I really want to be in? I picked up the pace here because I know I don't want us to run out of time. At some point, during the course of employment, you really have to think about what is the realistic or unrealistic tenure. When is it time to go? Bloomberg said, it's time to leave when you begin to believe something can't be done. When you get tired, Danielle, of pushing, but you know that that effort that you're pushing behind needs to be pushed, maybe you need to step aside and let somebody else push. Because if you just let it lay, now you know the community now loses an effort that it really needs to be moving forward. If we believe in it, we've got to be willing to be all in. Either you're going to be pig committed or chicken committed. You know the difference? The chicken's commitment to breakfast is nothing but an egg, and the chicken gets to live and lay another egg. The pig's commitment to breakfast is a ham. It's all in. All of you need to be ham committed, pig committed, all in. Give it your all, because that's what the organization needs. It does not need a part-time leader. It needs a leader who truly believes that that it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. And it becomes ingrained. It becomes part of your life because you're passionate about it and you believe in it and you care about it and you want to see the goals and objectives met. Because I'll speak from an economic development perspective, if we're not producing jobs, then who is? If we're not doing our job, who's doing it? And so you have to give it all. Then you got to think, who's your team? How do you treat the people around you? How do you take care of those that help you accomplish what you know needs to be accomplished? How we interact with the people on our staff is very important. Very important. Can you empower? Are you a servant leader and you convey that when times to be a thought leader with your team? If you fulfill the wishes of your employees, the employees will fulfill your vision. But you have to show that they're more than just a number. You have to understand and be the kind of manager that's involved with the people that you're responsible for. And you are responsible for them. You're responsible for their well-being. You're responsible for their growth and development. You're responsible for their execution of their job responsibility. And so how you treat them will directly be a direct correlation of your longevity with the organization, because they can make or break you without a doubt. And then finally, this is a quote that's been with me for all of my life. There's a destiny that makes us brothers. None goes as well on. All that you send into the lives of others comes back into your own. You are your brother's keeper. Approach it from the perspective of, if I give, I'll receive. I will reap as a result of what I sow. And there's some people that we're just gonna have to carry. And that's okay too. That's okay too. Understand that. And truly, if you shape your approach to not-for-profit management around the philosophy of service, bottoms-up service, and truly buy into the mission of the organization, understand the different nuances of your leadership, empower your team to be your partners as opposed to being your employees. If longevity is what you're looking for, you have a higher probability of receiving it than if you take another approach. I'm stopping there, and I'd like to open it up for any comments or questions that any of you might have.
All right, everybody, it's your time to jump in for sure.
I know you folks on here, Ryan, Grammatico, jump in here.
This is Karen. I just need to know where I can get the book.
Amazon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You have to say I've got the book. I've read this book. I think that I would have really helped me out before I took on being the executive director of the Community Action Agency, for sure. There's so many truisms in it. It's the kind of book that I think that you can read over and over and make notes on, highlight. It's almost more like an affirmation book than just a textbook. And so I think that's really good. And I think of this, the one thing, and it's actually your particular quote, Ronnie, that really sticks out to me is, the minute you stop making decisions to do your job and start making decisions to keep your job, you become worthless. And I think that's really powerful. I mean, I think there's a takeaway I mean, there's 100 takeaways from this particular presentation, but I think that, you know, I think he isn't clearly right to, you know, I cherish my time that I spent as executive director, but I did realize that, you know, I had another calling, which was, you know, going back to being a lawyer. But I'll tell you this, is that it is the hardest and in many ways thankless job, but at the same time, it is really, you know, it's really important. And so, you know, I salute everybody who is involved in the senior management of a nonprofit, because it is difficult work. I mean, it's extremely difficult, and I think that, but it's extremely important as well. And so, you know, I think we're really blessed to have, you know, Ronnie to come by to share his wisdom about his many years of experience in the nonprofit sector, the economic development sector as well. And again, you know, we still have some time for more questions. So please, you know, with class still technically in session. So, you know, to speak now, forever hold your peace. Or if anything, go ahead and get the book. and then hit Ronnie up with questions afterwards.
One of the things that I used to always ask a prospective employee during an interview, if you would have a problem reading something negative about yourself in the paper, if you have a problem having someone else stand up and take credit for something that you know you did, if you have a problem having someone blame you for something you didn't do, if those three things bother you, you might not want to work here. I mean,
that's true.
You work in a fishbowl, and everything you do is magnified and visible. And that's not for everybody, without a doubt. And you have to have tough skin. And again, but you're willing to take the arrows. You're willing to make the sacrifices because you believe in the mission of the organization. You passionately believe in the mission of the organization. So therefore, you want to be there.
All right. Well, give y'all another shot. If not, then I'll let Shannon take us away.
It's an excellent presentation, Ronnie. Learned a lot. I took a lot of notes. So thank you. Appreciate your time today. And I hope you guys will go out and buy Ronnie's book. It is on Amazon. I have a copy. Rocky has a copy. So go buy it.
Is this going to be on the tab?
Really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
See you guys
Bye,
soon.
everybody.
All right. Bye.